What's going on, guys? Andy here, and in today's video we're going to be jumping into our character render for the Peacock Knight we've been working through. In last week's video we came up with our final color palette, and now it's time to take those colors and polish this design. Now before we begin, if you're new here, I'm Andy. I'm a full-time UX engineer, and on this channel I share my journey, learnings, and passion for world building and character design with all of you. So if that sounds interesting, don't forget to subscribe. Now with that, let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, I've been playing around with the character's pose a bit and doing some gesture sketching. Ideally, you wouldn't need to readjust the pose of the character, but I honestly wasn't fully feeling the one that we had, so I wanted to see if I could push it a little bit more. With the sketch in place, I do a little bit of cleanup so I can get to the point where I feel comfortable masking out the shapes with color. Of course, if in the previous steps you had a pose you liked and had your work to the stage of fidelity that you were comfortable with, then by all means skip this step and roll with what you already have. Now, I should warn you that I am not like an expert renderer, painter, or what have you. Most of the time, I am primarily playing it by ear and switching up my approach each time. So rather than take this as instruction, just see it as commentary with some kind of generalized insight. So what I plan to do for this character is leave things relatively loose and sketchy. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you know I really love clean line art. But for this character, I want to try something a little different while maintaining a similar workflow. That said, even though things are remaining sketchy in terms of polish, I do want to make sure that all of the shapes and forms are where I want them to be. Now my process is honestly quite simple, as I'm sure you can see. I'm really only using two main brushes, which are the standard hard round brush and a round airbrush. I use the airbrush in conjunction with the lasso tool to bring out the form in certain shapes, and I'm also trying my best to paint over as many of the lines as I can. I'll usually start off with an airbrush using the multiply blend mode, but once I have some basic colors laid out, I go in with the normal blend mode and I try to simplify as many of my layers and the overall painting as possible. That said, I do end up using a lot of layers, and I do also make a number of duplicates as well in the event that I really mess up and I need to go back to a previous state. I mean, I did say earlier that I'm really not the greatest at this. A couple of things I like to remind myself of and try to remember while rendering is to consider how much detail I'm adding. As always, we don't want to oversaturate our render with detail, but rather control the amount of detail there is in certain areas such that the eye immediately knows where to look. To avoid over detailing, I typically like to work in different areas of the character and just like switch it up pretty frequently. So I'll work on one piece of the armor, for example, then move on to the leg wear. I find this allows me to generally bring everything to the same level of polish, then pick and choose the areas that I want to focus my attention towards afterwards. Because up until this point in all of our previous steps with color iteration and design iteration, we've been working mainly with flat colors, and because of that, I also want to take this opportunity to really spice up certain areas, add a little more detail into areas that didn't have them, and overall give the character the love that they deserve. Now, again, the level of polish that you decide to take your character to is entirely up to you. Now, I've always struggled with really detailed and polished rendering, so I tend to lean more towards a simplistic approach, using very few brushes, using simple lighting, and kind of minimal shading, mainly relying on gradients and such. So that all being said, the rendering is reaching its finished state at this point. I hope that hearing what I had to share or seeing my rendering workflow could help you in creating awesome characters. The step that I'll be sharing in the next video in this series will be for character turnarounds, where I'll show you how to take our character design and render and construct a front and back view for a 3D modeler down the pipeline. So if you're interested in seeing that, definitely make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. If you like this video, let me know in the comments down below by dropping your favorite emoji and hitting that like button. With that, I'm going to wrap up this video, and like always, I hope you guys have an amazing day, create fulfilling art, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.